It is Super Bowl Sunday and today's recipe is baked baby back ribs. So what we're going to use is we're going to use pork spare ribs, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut them at the joints. I already pre-cut this one a little bit, so you're just going to cut it at the joints and you're going to put it in a separate bowl. So what you do is see where the joints is and you slice through here so everyone can have their individual piece of rib. Okay, now that it's in a separate basin and it's cut, we're gonna add some vinegar to it to take out some of the rind. We're just gonna mix it up and just let it sit for a little bit, and then we're gonna rinse it out. Now we wash all of the ribs individually so that we can get out the vinegar scent and the vinegar taste from the ribs themselves. So the next step is we're gonna parboil the ribs. So what you need is about half a pot of very hot water on the fire, and we're gonna add salt, maybe a little bit more salt, and we're also gonna add black pepper. So we're gonna stir this in, and then we're gonna add the ribs. And as we add the ribs, I want you to pay attention to the water level. The water should cover the ribs, but it shouldn't spill over. So if you have too little water, once you add all your ribs, add the water. But if you have too much, you're gonna have to dip out some of the water. So let's add our ribs. Okay, so I'm gonna add just a little bit more water, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna let this boil for 15 minutes, and then we're gonna drain it. Okay, after we parboil the ribs for 15 to 20 minutes, I drained it and then I put it back into a pot because we're gonna add the seasoning now. And the reason we parboiled it to begin with is to start the cooking process. That way it cooks for a shorter time in the oven and also has a more tender texture when we eat it. So the first thing we're gonna add is green seasoning, which is a homemade seasoning. We're gonna add some jerk seasoning. We're gonna add garlic powder, onion powder, or onion flakes, and some cayenne pepper. Ordinarily I would mix it in my hand, but this did just come off the fire, so mix it with a spoon and let it rest for a little bit before we add the barbecue sauce. Now we're gonna make the barbecue sauce, and I'm gonna use the Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. I'm gonna just pour, we'll squeeze some in. Then I'm gonna also add some mustard to add some tanginess. A little hint of spice with another little pinch of cayenne. And we're gonna add about a tablespoon of sugar. We just mix it in. I placed the ribs in a baking pan that's lined with foil wrap, and now we're going to basically use like a paintbrush, and we're going to paint on the barbecue sauce onto the ribs individually. That makes sure that every single rib has sauce. Okay, so I flipped it over and now I'm gonna baste the other side. This side doesn't have nearly as much meat on it, so once I finish covering this side, I'm going to flip it back over before we put it in the oven. I flipped the ribs back over to the meat side and I placed it in a preheated oven. It's gonna be baking for a total of about 40 minutes at 350 degrees. About the 20-minute mark, I'm just gonna flip the ribs over in the oven so that both sides can cook thoroughly. After 20 minutes, take it out of the oven and flip it over. Once the ribs are flipped over, coat that side with barbecue sauce and then put it back into the oven for the remaining 20 minutes. Okay, so I've taken it out of the oven and I flipped it back to the meat heavy side, and now I'm going to do the final coat of barbecue sauce over the freshly baked ribs.